MKE600 is a shotgun microphone ideal for professional video camera applications. Maximal rejection of ambient side noises thanks to pronounced directivity. And because the MKE600 has a very good suppression of structure-borne noise, it makes one of the most versatile, all-round shotgun microphones on the market.
The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. From a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.
Hello everyone, welcome to ProAV TV, to our weekly Q&A session. Very informal little chat Q&A session. If you haven't tuned into one of these before, these are very informal. Literally just me talking directly to you guys in the chat, on the YouTube comments and in Facebook. So if you have anything you want me to talk about, just ping it in there and we can get started. It might last 20 minutes, it might last an hour, depending on how much you have that you want us to talk about, of course. Not much has been going on this week for ProAV other than the incredibly huge and exciting launch from Sony with the FX6, which I'm sure you guys have all been following. I won't go through it in too much detail on the stream unless there's questions about it, because I'm sure you've all watched our reviews. I'm sure you've seen things. We released a video today, which is the part one of a more in-depth look, which sort of looks at it between the A7S III, the FX6 and the FX9, and just tries to piece apart what I think is the most important part of the puzzle, which is the physical ergonomics, the actual main headline spec feature differences between the three cameras, because these cameras are all so good now that part two is going to be the image quality test. And of course, that is really important. These are professional tools. We need to see what they can actually do and how they perform. But that, I don't think, is going to be what helps people pick which camera to go for. Because at the end of the day, whether you pick an A7S III, an FX6 or an FX9, you're going to have incredible image quality. What's going to make their minds up is the physical ergonomics, how each one works as a tool, and the features that it gives you. And so that's why part one I was going through. Questions already come in from Mateen. When will the A7S III be in stock? If you mean free and available stock, who knows? It depends how many people can order them in the meantime. We have got a waiting list, and that waiting list is being supplied. So we had a big delivery of them come in this week, which have all gone out to customers. So they are in stock, if you like. They are coming in and then going back out again. It's just that we don't have free stock, as in there are units sitting here in the building, simply because we're selling them quicker than we can get them in from Sony. So if you really want one, I do recommend getting on the list, and therefore you can secure your place in the queue. If you're just waiting to see when they're going to be in stock, it's going to be quite a while, and much longer than it will be if you actually put down an order straight away. The other big launch, which I haven't talked about yet on the channel, but I did a little bit on social media, is this slider that's going next to me, which is the iFootage Shark Slider Nano. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have been seeing this and following this, but this is actually a really interesting slider. Now, iFootage have been doing sliders for a while. They had the big Shark S1 slider, which has been fantastic. And then they experimented a couple of years ago with a smaller slider, which was the Mini, which was a lovely slider, and it has some really, really nice features to it, like being able to be expanded with these simple slot on rails. But once you started making it motion control, it still ended up fairly big with bits to bolt on, like motion control sliders often do. So it was a very good portable motion slider, but they sort of looked at it and went, we want to take this one step further, and that's what this is. So this, sliding backwards and forwards, is their motion control slider with their manual flat base head on the top, the K5. And so you can put any flat based head on the top of this thing, and it will be able to pan left and right with the motion slide, because the actual flat base that the slider head screws onto pans. There's a motor panning the head inside this little carriage here, which is remarkable design. That is a really nifty little feature. And so because of that, yes, you lose your tilt, so it's not perfect. A full-blown motion slider will always be better, but you do get your pan and your slide, which is, for most video work, if, say, you're doing interviews and you just want that sliding shot on the close-up of an interview, which is sliding backwards and forwards like this one is next to me, you don't really often need to tilt up and down. Mostly it's just side to side. And so having the pan axis and the slide axis is normally all you need. And so I think this is going to be an amazing product. Let me just show you how quick it is to set up as well. If I do this, right, so if I cancel out of this and cancel out of it, so you press the two buttons on it there and it enters into manual mode. And so now I can slide backwards and forwards physically, whereas before it was locked before I pressed those two buttons. I literally just set a B point and an A point like that. I say, okay, go to its origin. This is all with just a little touch screen that's here on the side of the unit. And it's finished that, so I click start and it starts to move. I set it to loop, and now it's going to be doing that next to me. You don't have to get a phone involved if you don't want to. It's all there. It's really nice. Obviously, you can get a phone involved, and that's how you can do more complex things like time-lapse and stop motion, anything like that. But just for simply getting started as a video slider, it's brilliant. It's going to be really good for small little B-roll, for quickly, for interviews, anything like that. And it seems to be really quiet as well. Let me move the mic closer. You know, it's really quite quiet. And of course, the slower that you do it as well, the slower that will be. It's definitely not going to get picked up on mics. If it's not getting picked up on this mic this far away from me, it's not going to be picked up on lav mics or anything like that in an actual interview situation. And this is still a relatively quick move as well, so it can get quieter than this as well. Marshall's saying, have you done any tests of the K7 fluid head? Opinion. I like the K7. It's I don't think it's as unique on the market as the K5 is. I really like the little K5, not because it's a better head than the K7. The K7 is clearly better. But what this offers you in such a small little footprint and for such a low amount of money, I think it's really nice. The K7's problem is that it starts to get into more Manfrotto and E-Image territory, where, to be honest, I think E-Image just make better heads. They have actual better fluid dampening on them. Doesn't mean that the K7's a bad head. The K7's actually a brilliant head. I just think it's much more in line with what the rest of the competition is doing than the K5. And the K5 in particular with this slider is a really nice little pair. Okay, let's get to some other questions. So video editor bloke, there's been stuff about the FX9 loop being able to attach to the FX6 monitor, but I guess since you can't lock off the rotation, it would be too heavy. Any other options? That is exactly the point. So yes, it will fit. We have found it's a little sort of tight, so it doesn't clamp on quite as seamlessly as the one that the little LCD hood that comes with the FX6 does. But it does get on there. But because the actual mechanism that keeps the monitor tilted the way you want it to isn't quite strong enough for a big long loop like that, it gets a bit droopy, so it droops down. The alternative option would be the Zacuto Z Finder, or Kino Technic make little loops to go on. I think Hoodman's still making Hoodman ones as well. I'm not sure they are. But there's a couple of those little like loop viewfinder things that can go on. They work. The other alternative is to, my preferred option is to use a bigger proper EVF, something like the Zacuto Gratical, and mount that where the screen is, and mount the screen further near the back, so that it's sort of for somebody who you're working with, or it's a stand back and look at control panel, and then you've got a proper EVF and you've got that screen. But obviously that's going to be a higher priced option. Jess is also asking about the FX9 loop. Will it work? So I've just also heard back on A7S lead times. So lead times right now are about 1 to 2 weeks. So that's pretty good, actually. So Atine, if you're asking about A7S3s and when we're going to have them in stock, it's best not to wait for them to be in stock, but to put an order in. Should be looking at 1 to 2 weeks for new orders placed now, which is really good, actually, for one that is going to be one that's that new and exciting. We've also had a huge delivery of C70s going out this week, and some Blackmagic stuff coming in and out. So we've had Pocket 6Ks going in and out, which have always been hard to keep in stock. And the A10 Minis as well. We've got the A10 Minis and the A10 Mini Pro ISOs, I was just told, in free stock. So there are actually units available. So if anyone's looking for A10 Minis, get in touch with the sales team, because we just haven't been able, no matter how many we've ordered, we haven't been able to keep those in stock this entire year so far. They've been so popular, those things. So that is well worth knowing. Shoulder rig for the FX6. To be honest, any shoulder rig will work. There's nothing particularly fancy about the FX6 design that will mean that it needs to have anything particular and unique as a shoulder rig. If you've got one from an FS5 days, or just a universal one, so all of the big rig manufacturers, Zacuto, Small Rig, Voca, Shape, they all have sort of universal base plates and mounting systems from 50mm rods. They will all work very well with the FX6. There's nothing fancy about the FX6 that would need anything different. The bit, though, that you do need to pay attention to is the grip relocator. So the grip comes off just like the FS5 days. I believe it's the same, check this rather than just going off my say so, but I believe it is the same connector as the FS5 in terms of the physical mounting on the side of the camera. The length that goes in to actually do the camera control is different, though. It used to be a 2.5mm jack, it's now a 3.5mm jack, and there's a USB as well. So I think that has all changed. I think it's that way around. So Shem is saying the FX6 is just a 3.5mm audio jack short of being a home run camera. Is it possible to attach a 3.5mm adapter to the USB-C port? No, it's not. We talked about this in detail with Philip Bloom in our live stream with him. We sort of came up with a whole bunch of different ways that they could get audio into the camera once you take off the top handle. And yes, Phil's idea was exactly that, have a little USB-C to 3.5mm jack adapter, same as you would use on a mirrorless camera like an X-T3 or something like that for headphones. And that would be fantastic. That would do a very good job. The other thing I wondered is if there was a way of turning the mounting on the top that connects the handle into one of their MI shoes, because if you can put an MI shoe in there, then you can put a K3M on it. You could put their little on-camera microphone. There's all sorts of things you could do with that, if it's an MI shoe, but it's not an MI shoe. Some cameras have used an MI shoe to put the top handle onto the camera, like the Z90 did that. This one isn't. It's a different connection. But if they had some way of adapting that connection to an MI shoe, that would be possible. But all of that is just future speculation. As of right now, no, there's no way of getting audio into that camera other than the scratch audio microphone, which please do not ever include in any of your projects. It is purely for reference audio for the moment once you take the top handle off, which is a shame. Like you say, it's so close to being a home run perfect camera, but there is no such thing as a perfect camera. There's always something, and it does look like that's one of the things on the FX6. So I think we will see some solutions to that coming. I'm sure somebody will make something that will work. But yeah, as of right now, not much. SA Projects is asking opinion on the XLR K3M. I love it. I mean, it's a great little box. There's nothing wrong with it in the slightest. It's if you don't look now, but there's some suspicious movement behind you, David said. Are you talking about the slider? Or is somebody at the window? Or what's that about, David? The K3M. I do think every single mirrorless camera nowadays, I mean, Panasonic have got their one, Sony have got their one. I wish Canon had the same sort of thing. I think the KM3M is brilliant. With the FX6 specifically, I mean, you could replace the top handle with it, as if there was an MI shoe on the body, it would be fantastic. Because there isn't, it's a bit more limited. You could use it on the top handle to give you 4 XLRs, which is a way that you can be using it. Without that, I mean, there's not a huge amount of advantage to using it with the FX6. If you've got an A7 though, on the other hand, and any of the A7 lineup that has an MI shoe, the A7S Mark III, being the most recent one, obviously, it's definitely worth picking one up. They are fantastic. It's so much better than using the 3.5mm jack, both in terms of the preamps and the actual ports. It's full-size XLRs, and in terms of the audio controls is the biggest one, having physical dials to adjust your audio levels so that you can adjust them quickly on the go without having to dip into the menus. Definitely worth buying if you have one of those cameras. And with cameras like the FX9 as well, which have got 4 channels of audio on the body as well, it's also quite useful to get more XLRs. So, David doesn't trust it. Check your wallet and make sure the money is still there. It's fine. It's a friendly robot, David. Calm down. Don't worry. Scott, is the LCD screen on this C70 generally usable outdoors in bright daylight? Yes. It is, I would say, about the same as most other Canon screens have been nowadays. Now, something to look out for if you try one or if you buy one and you're just getting used to it, Canon normally put the monitor luminance in the menus, and by default it's not set to its brightest setting. So if you get a C70 out of the box, whether you're demoing it or borrowing it or hiring it or you've just bought one and you think, oh, this screen is a little bit dim, go into the menu, select monitor luminance and up it to +2. If you're outside, +2 is brilliant. The reason they don't have that on as default is obviously it drains battery there a little bit faster, but But also if you're inside in a dim environment, in a studio, for example, like I am here, you wouldn't want that on. You might be thinking you're a bit overexposed, or it just might be a bit glary. So if you're outside, whack the luminance up to 2 stops and you +2, you should be able to see it perfectly fine outdoors. Jeffrey, how ergonomic can the FX6 be on the shoulder with a proper cage, rods, pad, V-mount setup? So you can get it working. I mean, obviously you have to spend a little bit on third-party accessories, those things that you're talking about, a proper cage, rods, pad, V-mount setup. But once you get it there, because it's got that fantastic grip, because you can relocate that down with something like a shape handle and have the grip relocator cable, you get a lot of control from that grip, which makes it a much more usable camera on the shoulder than it otherwise would have been. Without that, you are sort of stuck to having to come up here to operate the camera. So while on an FX9, because you've got the hand grip going down there and then it's a longer camera with the viewfinder out here, you've got most of your controls here. Whereas to get center of balance on such a short camera like the FX6, it would have to be literally on top of your shoulder, so you'd be back here, which does make a big difference, because how on earth are you meant to see these sort of buttons and know what you're changing? Obviously, you could get around that by having counterweights and pulling the camera forward, but then you're just making it bigger and bulkier and more awkward. The best way by far is to take that grip, bring it down onto the hand grip and try and control it as much as possible through there. And you can control, because it's got a joystick on it, you can control most things and the menus, etc. through there. Okay, Dennis Moldovan. Hello, Dennis. Do you think there's going to be an RF variant of the C500 Mark II? No, I do not. That is one of my biggest regrets from Canon. Regret is the wrong word. Disappointment, I suppose, would be the right term. Is that they didn't find some way of building an RF functionality into their C300 and C500 lineups. I think, and this is pure speculation, I think the reason that they didn't do that is because they saw a choice between doing what Sony are doing and doing this interchangeable mount system, which is something more like Reds do, for example, and they've gone with that route. And the way that Sony do it with something like the Venice is they have a E-mount as the mount on the camera. That's what's there. And then you can bolt something on top of that to give it a different mount system like PL or EF if you want to. Now, that's okay, but I think they wanted to go down the other route of having actual physical swapping mounts on. Canon are very particular about their tolerances and the stability and all the rest of it. They would have wanted to do that right, and I bet they couldn't figure out a way of having the RF mount underneath one of those adapters. And also, I imagine the RF mount is quite an expensive mount to put on, whereas the E-mount isn't actually anything particularly fancy in terms of communication and everything. The RF mount is, and we're not seeing a huge amount of that potential with lens communication yet, but there is a huge amount of pins on there. It can transfer a lot of data, and so I think that's quite an expensive mount to have just hidden underneath other mounts, if that makes sense. So I think there must have been a bunch of things going on with camera design with Canon. The reason I call it one of my biggest disappointments with Canon is because if they could have made that work and you could choose EF, PL or RF to put on the C500 Mark II, the C70, the C300 Mark III, it would be so fantastic. But you can't. You can't put an RF lens on the C500 Mark II, and I don't think you ever will be able to, unfortunately. I think because of the way they've designed it now, you don't have enough space to put a mount with a shorter flange distance as the RF in between the base mount of the camera, which isn't a mount, it's just, the sensor plane where you can screw a bigger mount onto the top of it. But I don't think there's enough distance between that and where the front of the RF mount would have to be in order to make something like that. So I don't think it's possible to backwards engineer it. Hopefully I'm wrong, because that would be fantastic, but we'll see. Dennis now says he may have formulated wrong. What I meant was, do you think there will be a C70 using a full-frame 6K sensor? That's a completely different thing, Dennis. Come on. Okay. Do I think there will be a C70 using a full-frame 6K sensor? So I guess that would turn the C70, rather than being a sort of part of the same lineup with the C300 and C500 Mark II, it would almost be a different lineup. So you could have the C70 and then a full frame larger version of it as one lineup, the RF cinema cameras, if you like, and then the EF cinema cameras or PL cinema cameras as two lineups. That would be nice. That would be great. I'd be very curious to see what that camera would look like, because if they go much more expensive than the C70, they're going to be priced out of the ballpark for a lot of the users that don't want some of the features that would be in the C300 and the C500 Mark II. If they're going to keep not having the RAW, if they're going to keep only having RF and not interchangeable mounts, and if they're going to sort of have less all-eye codecs in there. So the C70, for example, can only do all-eye real-time, not in slow motion. So if they're going to keep with that sort of theme, it works at the C70's price point. But once you start going up into any higher price points, I struggle to see how popular that would be. And if you're doing that with a full-frame sensor, it would have to be at a higher price point than the C70. So I don't know how that camera would work. If it just has all the features of the C500 Mark II, but without the interchangeable mounts, then sure, that would be a lovely camera. It would be absolutely lovely. You can just choose the body style that you want. It's the same with the Sony's, having a choice between basically the same camera in different ergonomic styles. I'm all for that. I think cameras have got so good nowadays that market segmentation into different bands, if you like. This is an entry-level professional camera, so it doesn't have this, it doesn't have this. That's on this one, and then the mid-tier one, and then the high-end one. I think that, in terms of the features that you put in cameras, the playing field's been leveled by now. So literally just having the same camera platform, choosing different ergonomic styles, I think there's a lot of sense in that. Okay, video editor bloke. I liked the look of the Aperture Amaran Tri 8C LED light, but I've seen it's now been discontinued. Is there anything similar spec and quality and cost to that? So the Aperture Amaran, the Tri, was one of their earlier LED lights, which was bare-faced LEDs. Bare-faced LEDs, to be honest with you, have gone out of fashion a little bit, if you like, simply because they aren't soft, they aren't hard, they're this sort of middle of the road in terms of softness light. You do still see lights on the market and being sold right now which have bare-faced LEDs, of course you do. Flexible panels, for example, like the ones lighting me right now, do, but then they've got different advantages, like being flexible. And it's very easy to put softboxes on them like these ones here have got. The other lights that spring to mind are Lupos. If you haven't seen Lupos lights, definitely look those up. If you're the reason you were interested in the Amaran is because of its brightness and its power for its size, definitely look at Lupo. They have a whole bunch of lights. In fact, the action panel, one second, is my background light. So this is the Lupo action panel, which is a hard, turn it off there, you can see what it is. It's hard LEDs with a focused beam in front of them, so it's a much harder source, but it's very, very bright for the price that it is. You know, this is sort of 500 quid or something like that, and it's full RGB. So I really like this little action panel from Lupo. They also then make smaller ones, which we use as a backlight all the time, called the Smart Panel, and they do bigger ones called the Super Panel, and then the Super Panel full color. So definitely look at Lupos if it's brightness that was interesting for you. But no, in Aperture's range, there isn't anything to replace that. Put my backlight back, otherwise Dan will be unhappy with me. MR Videos. So MR Videos is a Sony shooter. They own the FS5 and the A7S Mark III, and will order the FX6. Canon want to protect their cinema line and circumcise the R5. Sony goes the other way, all in. What do you think? I don't think that at all. The R5 although it was marketed as being a big video tool with raw video and 8K video and all of this sort of stuff, at its heart, the R5 is not what the A7S III is. The A7S III is Sony trying to make the best mirrorless camera they possibly can make for video shooters. The R5 isn't that. The R5 is Canon trying to make the best stills camera they can possibly make for still shooters. And at the same time, because it's got a bunch of extra processing power in it, going, well, why don't we unlock all these video features? Because we've been criticised before of holding video features back. That, I think, is what Canon did. And so they may have marketed it a little bit wrong. Who knows? They did what they did. So I don't think it's that they purposefully hampered the R5 to protect their cinema line. At the end of the day, they wanted to make a stills camera that was fully weather sealed, that was built like a tank, that was all the advantages of mirrorless. And like, it's 45 megapixels at 20 frames a second, that thing. It is an incredible stills camera. We've got one of our sales team here, Liam, who is a stills photographer in his spare time and beautiful wildlife photographer. His work's beautiful. He's not beautiful. His work's beautiful. But he's been borrowing one at the moment and is just blown away by the still side of the camera. It is incredibly good. The autofocus tracking for stills, it's just the best stills camera he's ever used, and he's immediately selling all of his equipment to try and buy one. As a stills camera, the R5, I would say, is the best stills camera I have ever used if you're looking for an all-rounder. And so it is not the video tool that Canon sort of promised us with some of their marketing, because it's such a good stills camera. There's got to be a trade-off, hence why we see on the A7S Mark III that it only does 12 megapixel stills. And that's the trade-off in order to have all the video functions. So the disappointment, I suppose, was the R6 and that not having some more video-ish features in there. In some ways, it was just a trimmed-down version of the R5. I would love to see a version of the R6 which is more in line with video, so it doesn't have any overheating, loses some of the still side, and is everything the R5 is, maybe without the 8K, but everything the R5 is in a mirrorless body. That would be amazing. But no, I don't think it's as simple as Canon crippling to protect their cinema line. I think there was other things going on there. And Sony, I think trapped themselves between a rock and a hard place with the FX6, because they made such a capable camera with the A7S Mark III. How do they then turn that into a video camera with the FX6 and not outperform in many ways their higher end video cameras, which are designed in a very different way for different strengths? Which is why the FX6 on paper is quite a bit more capable in terms of frame rates and everything like that than the FX9 is. But when you really boil down to the FX9 in terms of who is it a tool for, it's a tool for more broadcast use, so it has the more legacy features like interframe, MPEG 422, support for a B4 mount, being able to crop in and out of different file formats while keeping 4K resolution, all of those sorts of things. The FX9 makes a lot more sense. Does that mean that because people didn't know about the FX6, they bought an FX9 when really the FX6 would have been the right tool? Of course, there's going to be people like that, as there is with every new camera release. That's an unfortunate part of releasing new equipment. And I think this will have been a particularly bad example of that. There will be quite a few people with an FX9 now thinking, I wish I had an FX6. To those people, what we've been saying is, don't worry, you still have an incredibly good camera. If you want to trade it in and go for an FX6 instead, go for it. But the FX9 is an incredibly good camera. It's not like you've ended up with a really bad camera. You've got an incredibly good camera, and now an even better one has come along. They will be fine. Okay, where am I? David, the C70 has no Rec 709 LUT output over HDMI. I had a rep confirm that. Case. Any idea if that might be fixed in a firmware update, or do we have to buy a field monitor with LUTs built in? It does do LUTs. I don't see why it wouldn't want to put one on the HDMI out. Does that mean no LUTs over the HDMI out, or does that mean that there isn't a specific Rec 709 one that you want? Because as far as I knew, you could put LUTs on the HDMI. We will test that, and we've got an AC70 at the moment for a couple of tests. So we will test that. That's interesting. I did not know that. Any news on FX6 gimbal audio solutions? We just talked about that in length. Well, long story short, no, it is what it is. There's a Super 35. There's no jack on without taking the handle off. It would be great to have a USB-C to 3.5mm jack adapter or something to go onto the handle connector to turn it into an MI shoe. If Sony can make either of those options, then we're good to go. At the moment, it's a little bit limited on audio. For gimbals, you've got to either use scratch audio and record separately or have the top handle on there or something else. Okay. So, can you use softboxes with those? Do you mean the Lupo lights, video editor bloke? Yes, absolutely. You can. They make little plastic ones for them. They don't make any bigger ones than that. But yes, you will be able to put them through a softbox or just through a big sheet of diffusion is how I like to use them. I really like to use those because they're so bright and such a small window. I find they work better in something like a book light or a little way back from a sheet of diffusion than with a bigger softbox on them because they don't have that wide beam angle that normal traditional LEDs have. So a book light is bouncing off a reflector and then through a thin sheet of diffusion, or just have a thicker sheet of diffusion and walk the light back a bit and blast it through that. For that, the Lupos are absolutely brilliant. For putting a bigger softbox on it, something like an Octodome or something like that, they're not ideal lights. You want something with a bit of a bigger, wider field of view. Okay. Andy Walkin, is the Aperture 300D that much more powerful than the 300X? Yes, it's about twice as bright. The 300X will be strong enough for standard key light interviews, absolutely. The 120D is strong enough for standard key light interviews. We use it all the time. Yes, the 300X is about the same brightness as the 120D, and it will be easily bright enough for key light interviews. If you need brighter, of course, there's the 300D, and their new 600D is now coming, and they're saying it's going to be around mid-December, which is very exciting. That, if people don't know about that, we saw it at IBC last year as a prototype. It is their bigger, better, just beefy HMI replacement of an LED light, which looks very exciting. I think we've had price points on that as well. I think it's about 1,800 euros. So how that will translate to pounds, I'm not entirely sure. But that's going to be quite an exciting light. When is the C70 coming, says Honzurella? It's now. We've had a big shipment through the door this week out to customers. So if you've got an order in, it will be getting to you soon. If you haven't got an order in yet, orders are being fulfilled. So hopefully it won't be too long. Chris Burgess, any good Black Friday deals coming to ProAV? Yes, but not yet. So Black Friday is coming up. So all the way throughout this week, we will be sort of keeping an eye on the website. I'm not entirely sure how the web team are planning to release them this year, whether they're all just going to go in one go. But one thing's for sure, we will have lots of Black Friday deals on the website, and they will be going out in an email. I'm not entirely sure what the exact plan is, because I'm not involved with it at all. But yes, from what I've seen, there are some quite good ones. And there are some already available. So if you head over to our website, where's the banner? So Canon and Sony have both got a winter cashback on at the moment. Blackmagic have got this. You can get a free speed editor when you buy Resolve, or vice versa. Resolve free when you buy the speed editor, which is quite nice. There's the Sony winter cashback. Here it is, the Swit. So the Swit have got this autumn sale on, which basically is their Black Friday deals. They've just spread it out over a larger period of time than Black Friday. So if you're looking for batteries or monitors or HDMI wireless transmitters, or actually light as well, because the E60 is on there, this is on the little RGB light. These are some quite good deals. For example, if you're looking at wireless transmission, the Curve is only £410 ex-VAT, and the bigger Flow 2000, which is SDI and HDMI and 3D lookup tables using proper DFS compliant Wi-Fi, so wireless, so no Wi-Fi chips or anything like that for latency, and 2,000 feet transmission. So it's a really high-end professional system, the Flow 2000, and that's a whole kit for 1,750, which is a really good deal. Like in the Teradek world, that would be £3,000 ex-VAT. So that is a really good deal at the moment. Definitely recommend that. If you're, it's not exactly an impulse buy at that price still, but if you are in the market for a wireless transmitter, that is a very good one. Much more down the affordable sort of impulse buy level, if you like, are these ones. This is their tiny little V-mount battery. I showed this on stream a couple of weeks ago. Really small little V-mount battery. If you do traveling, it's perfect, which is on offer at the moment. This is their sort of larger, chunkier version of an Aperture MC, if you like. It's a lot brighter, and it's full RGB and only £110, which is quite nice. It's really good build. I was really surprised by the build quality on that light as well. It's really robustly built. And then their monitors. So this is their 7-inch high brights, 3000 nit monitor. This is the one that's only HDMI. They do a version which is HDMI and SDI for a bit more money. But this is a 3000 nit 7-inch monitor for £299, which is a really good price. And it's got all the tools you need on there. It's got waveform and lookup tables and vector scopes, and it sort of uses a page interface where you can use this joystick to swap between them, which is very, very convenient. So there are some deals already out there, particularly the SWIT ones. More will be coming all the way throughout this week. Where did I get to? Liam, just to point out that the R5 eye autofocus is incredible. If I haven't said that already, you have said that to me anyway, Liam. You have said that several times. I know you're impressed. If you are a stills photographer, definitely take a look at the R5. It is, I don't think it's hyperbolic for me to say it's the best stills camera I've ever used. It's really, really good. Okay, David, users have also confirmed this correct. No lookup tables out over HDMI. That is a strange thing for them to have missed out there. I'll have a word with Canon about that. Hopefully that's just something they can add back in firmware. I'll send that feedback to the engineers, because that doesn't sound like that should be the case. Quite surprising, like you say. What do you think of the Zcam E2 S6? Zcams are interesting little cameras. They are mainly for multi-camera use. I mean, they're box cameras. They've got an Ethernet port on the back. It's a bit like Panasonic's new BGH1. But they're sort of being marketed more towards a cinematic user, like Reds and Kinefinities and that sort of ballpark. And so I think if you're going to use them as a multi-camera option, I mean, obviously now they've got the Panasonic that competes with them, but they are very good options. If you're using them as a cinematic option, there could be better options on the market. I would look at Kinefinity and I would look at Blackmagic. I mean, Blackmagic, down at that price point with the pocket cameras, are just ridiculously good. And hopefully they release a new something in that ballpark at some point soon. Because Blackmagic really, down at that low end of the cinematic market, have owned that market. And I've had a little play with a Zcam. I just think they're a little bit slow to operate compared to something like a Pocket or a Kinefinity. They are nice. They are built quite nicely. They feel robust. But I don't know. They just felt strange as a camera. I wasn't quite convinced, to be honest. But I haven't spent enough time with them to know that. And they just go up against the Pocket. And going up against the Pocket is a hard thing to do, because the Blackmagic Pocket is remarkably capable. Okay, MR videos. About the R5, you're absolutely right. Perfect stills camera, maybe the best on the market, but the fake overheating and the bad video codec communicates don't shoot videos with me. Okay, yes. I don't like the term fake overheating. This has gone around the internet all over the place, and I have a big problem with it. My problem with it isn't that Canon have put that into the camera on purpose, because Canon have put that into the camera on purpose. Absolutely, they have. It is a software-based overheating rather than, oh, I've detected I've overheated, so I emergency need to shut down, which is what most of us would associate with an overheated camera. It's instead Canon being preempting that and saying, we don't want you to harm your camera. We're only going to let you use it for this amount of time, and then we're going to shut you down. Now, there are odd things about it, like how long it takes to recover, and it's quite irritating that it is done on a timer to recover rather than detecting the temperature and saying, well, actually, I've shut you down, but the temperature's fine. I've checked my internal temperature. I'm good to go again, and just letting you shoot again. That would be amazing. But they haven't done that. They've just tried to just write a piece of code to cover all situations out there, when all situations out there are not equal. Me shooting with the camera in this office versus someone in the Florida sunlight versus someone in the heights of Canada in the snow. You know, we're all going to have different experiences with how quickly a camera, in a sense, heats up. Putting the same limitations on all three of those situations, I get why people are massively annoyed by it. Don't get me wrong. I just don't like the term fake overheating. It makes it sort of sound like something really, really odd and dodgy, when it's just software code to stop the camera getting damaged, is what it is. It's annoying that it's in there. Don't get me wrong. It's annoying that it's in there, and I wish it wasn't. Hopefully they release sort of video versions of those cameras which have all the strengths. Now, as for bad video codecs, Canon have done the same thing as they did with the XF705 and relied quite heavily on H.265. Now, I'm dying to test some of the newer computers. For example, Apple's new M1 chip. There's a lot of talk at the moment about that being a lot better for editing H.265. Now, that I am very, very interested in, because if that's the case, you know, the Mac Mini is a £700 machine. If that can edit R5 footage, then that's a clear recommendation. Because it's not that H.265 is a bad video codec, it's that the computers aren't quite up to handling it yet. Well, as soon as you get computers that will natively handle that, that codec is going to be a dream. It's going to be much better than it's going to have all the same drawbacks of H.264, as in it's not ideal for a computer to encode. Ideally, it would be intraframe and all the rest of it. Well, it can be intraframe. But it's not ideal. Ideally would be something like the XF AVC wrapper, for example. But it is a very good codec, and it will get you incredibly high quality in small file sizes. So as soon as computers are there, I think it's actually a really good codec to have. But right now, the computers aren't there. But I'm very interested in testing those new Apple ones, because they might be what we're all waiting for. Yeah, and as for other codecs in there, they're just the same as they are. They're fine. They're just nothing fancy compared to the other codecs they've got in there. They have, however, got RAW internal. So, you know, they have got some good video codecs in there. Like that 8K RAW, yes, it overheats very quickly, but it's an incredible file. That is a very good video codec. Okay, Video to Blokes checked out the Lupo and saw the diffuser. Yep, fantastic. Cool. And Chadwin has just watched the FX6 review. It looks so nice. I really want to try one soon. It is so nice. It is very nice. If you are based in the UK, let us know and we can do an online demo with you as soon as we've got one. Or hopefully we'll be able to, in the next, 4-5 months or something like that, open back up the office after the winter ends. Who knows? And we can have the showroom going back as normal. Who knows what's going to happen with physical camera demos over the next 6 months or so. But in an ideal world, obviously, we'd have one here for you to come in and try. But in the absence of that, hopefully we can set up some sort of an online demo if you're in the UK. Or I will get one back to do us. If any of you guys got anything you want to see on the FA6, by the way, streams, videos, you've got something you want us to check out and test or interview people on a stream, just let me know. Very up for doing more content on it. And Dan has kindly just reminded me that the Action Panel dual colour is £465 ex-VAT, which is the light that's my backlight, that RGB splash on the background there, which I showed earlier, which for that is a very, very good price, I think. I really like Lupo products. Okay, I think that is a good place to end it. Chadwin says, if you're ever in the UK, swing by. As soon as the showroom is open, you are more than welcome. Right, so thank you all so much for watching. I really enjoy doing these. It's good to hear from people and that can tune in to watch these each week. So I think we will be carrying on doing these quick little streams each week. Thank you very, very much for joining me, and thank you so much for leaving so many comments. And make sure to keep an eye on ProAV's website for Black Friday deals this week. And if you want to check out any of those Swit deals or the cashback on Canon and Sony that's up and running. And don't forget what I said at the beginning about some shipping bits and bobs. We've got 8 Mini Pros, not 8 Mini Pros, 8 Minis and 8 Mini Pro ISOs in stock. So if you're after one of those, let us know. And we are shipping out new cameras pretty well now. So C70s are shipping out, and A7S, we're looking a couple of weeks for lead time on those. So getting into a good place with some of those new cameras. So yeah. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.